Ralph, one of the things that you mentioned, and I think you talk about this on your website, is this idea of streamlining business scaling with unified cloud ERP solutions. Can you explain to our listeners the process of scaling from early stage to full commercialization using a single cloud solution? Can you elaborate on that idea?
Yes, happy to do that, Jack. And that terminology really relates to regulated industries and life sciences, but the same holds true for companies that are consumer products based or wholesale distribution based.
Mm-hmm.
So the concept is that we employ what we call a crawl, walk, run philosophy, which is what you want to do is you want to crawl, you want to get your initial system configured, set up, and get operational on it. In the case of a life science company, that may mean that during their clinical trial stage, they're getting financials, they're getting project management, and they're getting inventory tracking and purchasing up and running. And so what that does when you talk about streamlining is we're usually taking people from, running QuickBooks, running a bunch of different spreadsheets, and somebody created a separate access database, and there's no unified single source of truth. People underestimate how costly in terms of time and efficiencies running something like that is.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we can stand up that what we call phase one of the project, it sets the stage for them to have a unified version of all the information they need. It increases the speed of their business decisions, increases their efficiencies, obviously. And it sets the stage to be able to then grow into the rest of the solution. Now, what's great about the SAP solutions that we implement is it comes with all of the components that you really need, all the applications that you need already there. And it's a matter of configuring them rather than having to install, an add-on product to accomplish production, or an add-on product to accomplish requisitioning or quality or things like that. So people are already in the user interface. And now when it's time to move on to more of, the clinical, move out of clinical stage and into commercialization, they're already familiar with the solution. They're already familiar with the user interface. And so now what we're going to do is just configure and activate additional features of the software for them to start to use. And so that gets us into our walk phase. And now, as we look at it, now we're running our financials, we're running our supply chain, we're up and running, and we're, producing and shipping product. And now when it comes to really accelerating, we can start to apply some of the, advanced kind of planning, advanced logistics, perhaps bring e-marketplaces into place that allow them to then be able to handle more volume. And so what we're doing is laying the foundation, a strong foundation that has all the proper controls in it. And then all you're doing is kind of turning it up until the point that you're handling the volume at full commercialization. If in the regulated environment, that's a fully validated solution, meaning that it's FDA qualified. And that's when we're at the run phase.
Got it. And so, Ralph, what would you say are some of the benefits of using a single cloud solution as opposed to multiple solutions or even on-prem for businesses in the various industries that you work with?
Great question, and one that, when you're in the sales cycle, we have to answer this all the time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think a unified, one of the biggest things is a unified user experience, right? So if you're in a single kind of cloud in a box or, suite in a box or federated type cloud solution where all of the user interfaces are the same, right? People have an easier time moving from application to application. It becomes familiar to them. And it also, in this world, we're allowed to personalize that user experience, at least on the SAP solutions that we're engaged with. And so it's been proven that when you can personalize and have a consistent user experience, you're getting 30% more productivity out of your people. So that's one reason why you would want to have a unified solution. Now, then you're starting to talk about, okay, well, I can do that on-prem or I can do it in the cloud. Well, I think that a lot of it comes down to the total cost of ownership, what you want to be spending your human capital on. So in the on-prem world where you have to have more IT personnel, more people doing the care and the feeding of the solution, you're not spending capital on actually your product or what I would call your secret sauce or getting into additional markets. So as you take a look at some of the SAP solutions that we represent, the subscription covers everything. It covers the hosting, it covers the upgrades, it covers the continuous innovation, it handles your whole DevOps. And so again, you're taking that effort and energy out of your business, which is non-core to your business, and actually redeploying that type of resource investment into what will help make you more money.
Yeah. And Ralph, well, first, can you share with our listeners, you'd mentioned a couple of times SAP products. Can you, for the benefit of our listeners, share what those products are that Navigator Business Solutions supports?
Yes, we handle the full, what we'll call a mid-market suite of products with SAP, the ERP solutions. So it starts at the lower end with SAP Business One. Then there's SAP Business by Design, which is a product that's been around for 13 years, which despite some recent press is not being sunset by SAP, but rather is being put in a mode where since it's a mature product, they're going to continue to innovate and do updates inside the application for things like taxes and regulatory compliance, things like that. And they're going to then push innovation through the business technology platform, which is a whole nother topic we could talk about.
Yeah, exactly.
We're also engaged in bringing to market S4 HANA Cloud Public Edition, which is the full name of that solution.
Yeah. So Ralph, let me ask you this. I mean, you touched on this, I think, but let me ask you a common CXO question that you probably get and your team gets a lot during the sales process. But maybe dig a little deeper here on this. But how does Navigator Business Solutions ensure a seamless transition for businesses as they scale? You know, it's all about business disruption, right? And that's a big conversation, or usually it's at least a conversation, you know, when organizations go through any sort of change with their ERP solutions.
Yes.
But how do you make that a seamless transition? What does that look like to you guys, and how do you make sure that happens?
Yeah, so I think it starts with making sure you have the right project charter and project team around it. So having a project charter, having a steering committee, having a good project team, and understanding why you're doing the project in the first place. Because if you don't have a good reason for doing the project, right? I always when I'm talking to my sales guys, I say, what's their compelling event, right? If we happen to be just making a change for, I'm not going to say for change's sake, right? Nobody would ever really do that today. But if there isn't a compelling material business reason why to get off of one platform and onto another, then it's going to be a tough project.
Yeah.
And so that's where it comes down to what the reason is, what the product charter is, et cetera. Now, inside of all of that is to minimize the disruption, Jack, which is what, you're absolutely right. Disruption is really one of the reasons that people will make a no decision, right? They'll say, oh my goodness, this just isn't worth, this isn't worth the energy. We'll just stick with what we got for a while and kind of what we call kick the can down the street a little bit, right? Then as we take a look at that project organization, having the right people from our side engage with that. So what we do is we look to align the right. So we always have an executive sponsor who on our part is either Russell DeLapp, the EVP of Services and Support, or Vaseem Mistry is director of the practice. So that we're talking right to the executives. So if there's any escalations, they're addressed and talked through with the steering committee. The project manager from our side is aligned with the project manager from the customer. Our subject matter experts are aligned with the subject matter experts on the customer side. And so it's constant communication. It's rapid decisions is going to be one of the biggest things that we like to make sure that we ensure. So we actually, in our statement of work, talk about the fact that, hey, when there's a business decision, it needs to be made within 3 days. Otherwise, we're going to escalate it. Because as you're looking to make good, fast decisions, that's going to be a little bit like ripping the Band-Aid off, right? It hurts a lot less if you just get it done quickly as opposed to let's debate this over the next 2 weeks. So again, I'll talk about it. Project charter, project organization, rapid decisions, and then continuous and constant communication is really another element of it that you have to ensure.
Mm-hmm. So, Ralph, what would you say are, from your experience, obviously, I know you and your organization and your team well, and you folks are very successful. But what would you say are some of the biggest challenges? So you might have all the right proper controls and processes in place, but the reality is you're working with organizations with lots of employees, lots of human beings. What would you say, just in general, are some of the challenges you see that may be most common? And then how do you and your team at Navigator Business Solutions kind of mitigate that challenge?
I would say that a lot of it all comes down to, again, you heard me reference this before, right? It's the human element. And you mentioned that, Jack, right? We're working with companies that have lots of people, a lot of diverse personalities, right? If you talk to one person that's a CFO, that can be a completely different persona than another CFO. So you don't, just because a person holds a title and a role, they're not going to be the same. They're not going to view things the same. They're not going to be as enthusiastic or as personable. So as we take a look at it, some of the biggest challenges really are centered around the human component of a project. It's just some experiences we've had, right? As you take a look at the people that are actually evaluating the software during the sales cycle, more often than not, once they've done the evaluation, they're oftentimes turning that project over to a project team to implement it. And so there's a disconnect between the evaluation and why it was selected, and then the people that are handed the project to implement. So one of the things we do when you talk about mitigation in that area is we're always asking to have all the stakeholders at the table, or as many stakeholders at the table during the evaluation process. For instance, I'll never, with all due respect to the IT people out there, right? We won't sell to the IT team. We have to have a CFO at the table, a controller, a director of finance. We need a director of operations, a COO. We need a chief product officer, chief sales officer at the table during the conversations, because those are the people that once you've made the decision, it's going to be their teams that have to go move forward and implement it. And so what we try to do is create that good leadership for the project during the sales cycle itself. So that's how we mitigate that. Another challenge that we have is turnover. Not turnover on our side, but turnover on our customer side, right? If you look at the great retirement or the whatever you want to call it, over the last couple or 3 years, there's been a lot of change in terms of people's organizations. And so that's a very difficult one to mitigate. The best you can do really there is good project management, good documentation, and good processes to be able to bring that next person up to speed. So again, really the human element or the human factor is what provides the primary challenges.
Yeah, great points. Thank you for that. And what can you share with our listeners about the differentiators with SAP products or SAP in general, right? So we hear this all the time, why not Oracle? Why not Infor? Why not Epicor? I'll give you a chance to plug SAP, but what would you say, just in general, maybe even from a higher level, what are some of the differentiators that you could speak to in terms of the SAP products?
Yeah, I would say that the SAP products have come a long way in terms of the user experience. I mean, as you take a look at it, SAP is known for ERP, right? They invented the category. I think they're best known for the large enterprise, but that comes with pluses and negatives, right? As we take a look at getting into the mid-market, really kind of the small to mid-size to middle market, that becomes almost an anchor around our necks as we try to sell the software, because everybody's thinking it's a $7 million software purchase and a $40 million implementation. Yeah. But what SAP has done really well is create a highly connected and integrated ERP solution, both with by design and with S4 Cloud Public Edition. And they have it with Business One. I'm going to kind of leave Business One to the side right now. Although that's where, my initial relationships with SAP began. It's a really good ERP for the smaller size company. Yeah. But as you look at kind of the pure cloud play and cloud-based ERP solutions, what they've done is they've created a platform and an openness through APIs, so it makes it easy to integrate with. It makes their innovation that they can introduce to the product much easier to do. And as you take a look at it, they have this concept of continuous innovation where every quarter, new functionality, new features, new technology. are introduced to the product. And so what that does is really, it rather than doing these big monolithic upgrades that you tended to do in the old days, once a year you had to do an upgrade. And when we talked about business disruption, it's probably nothing more disruptive than an upgrade. What you're doing is you're getting all this great technology in small bites, and you're able to more easily integrate that into your business and use that technology then to streamline it. So I think that SAP's kind of holistic view is the difference.